So it's been about another week of letting this jar of the Morel culture grow, and you can see groups of sclerotia right there and there. These little ones growing up on the side. Not really any rhyme or reason to where they're coming up. It's kind of scattered. You can see the inside's almost like gelled up. It's so thick in there. And then there's a lot of this brownish fuzz mycelium that all the Morel species make. Sometimes it turns like a dark gray, almost like it's some sort of cotton mold. But it kind of looks like to me like the sclerotia aren't getting any larger per se, but rather they're developing small and then kind of growing together into a larger one. So hopefully that's what happens to there. That little spot there. But I'm just gonna let this jar sit for as long as it takes and see anything come out of it. You never know, might actually have a little one start growing. Now, here's the dish that came from. And see if you can tell. You can see a few little sclerotia forming back there. Mostly around the perimeter of the glass, and probably has more to do with its location, just because there's less thick mycelium at the edge. Some more space for them to pop up there. That's all I can figure. But again, really no rhyme or reason to it. And you can see up here, I've got these first bags of Morel spawn. There's my bag of Plutus cervinus spawn, almost fully colonized. Taking a little long, but still looks healthy. These first bags I made right here, you can see I've added 2 cups of coffee water back into the bags to get the grain even wetter. You can see it's growing all over. I also have some bags too that I didn't add any extra water to. That's how I make my normal grain spawn. And you see they've almost fully colonized as well. Now I've also made bags with 4 cups of water. And of course the bottom's a bit goopy, you have to break it apart, but it's still growing just fine in it, and there's no water sitting there. And then a couple days ago I even made some bags with 6 cups of water in them, which didn't work out too good in the sense when I pressure cooked it for about an hour into pressure cooking it, I started having water spurt out the top of the valve, and I had to turn it off because it was getting too bad. So water must have been boiling in the bags themselves and pushing out. And yeah, it was probably about up to here was mushy grain that I had to break apart and mix in. Still not as quite as mushy as some of the bags that I've done before that accidentally got wet, where they sucked water in from the cooker because the cooker cooled down too fast and the bag's pressure got uneven. And those bags, they had goopy almost all the way halfway up with really mushed up grain. But that was also because that was back when I boiled the grain ahead of time for like an hour, if you remember those videos. If you don't know, I don't boil the grain ahead of time, I just soak it overnight in the water. And for a while I was adding coffee water back to the regular grain spawn, like the king oyster spawn and whatnot, which I have more made too. Hopefully it's going to work out. But when I added the water back then, I really found it unnecessary, especially if you're using the bag for spawn. Makes the grain a little bit easier to break up if it's not as wet. Of course, if you're growing something right from the grain, you want it as wet as possible so the mushroom doesn't have any chance of drying out. These are all 4-cup ones too, I just haven't marked them up. But very thick growth. I'll be using these bags over here that I didn't add any water to spawn to plain sawdust, plain old mushroom compost that's hopefully ate up a bit. You'll just try different various experiments of low nutrition media. I even might, some of these sawdust bags, add water back to the sawdust to make the sawdust very wet, so should be alright. And even with it being so wet, or even these 6 cup of bags that didn't pressure cook for anything over an hour, which, you know, any other time would be bad because the grain might go sour before it colonizes at all. But I believe these morels will grow so fast throughout the grain that it's not going to have any problems. I made up some sawdust bags today using the Morel spawn. I used the regular Morel bags up here. You can see they're fully colonized. No extra water added. But you can see all the sclerotia forming all over the bag, all that orange. Here's some of the 2 cup bags. If you didn't know better, looking at a lot of this mycelium that the Morels make, you would think there would be a contamination. It's like in this one I can see like 1, 2, 3, at least 3 different types. And when you look in these liquid culture jars, you can see like there's a brown, kind of a fluffy white, there's sclerotia, like a less fluffy white. Makes me wonder if you could isolate out the different types, that they like one type would be better for the sclerotia production, etc. So a lot of experimentation could be done. But I've taken one of these regular bags, made the sawdust. Hope it'll turn out well. I don't know how long I'm going to leave it colonize on the shelf, because I'm not really sure how big the sclerotia will get indoors. But eventually I'm going to be putting outdoor beds and make some videos and all that too. You can see these 4 cup ones are colonizing just fine. I'm not mixing any of this up either. Seems to be growing fast enough. If maybe it was stubborn, like a large patch, I would mix it up, but seems to be doing fine. Still just started to get some growth on the 6 cup ones. You can see how much more hydrated the grain is and lighter color because it didn't get cooked as long. You know, if I could cheat and get away with pressure cooking it less, you know, I'll try it. I did kind of cheat though when I did these first dishes. Really, I should be doing at least 1 transfer away from the spore inoculation of the dish, because I made 3 up about a week ago, and 2 of them definitely had green mold in it, and 1 was questionable, so I had to remake them again, and this time I'll play by the rules and take a bit of the leading edge mycelium that pops up quick and then transfer that so it'll be clean. Well, it's time for an update on all these black morels. First, you can see up here, these are the bags I made originally, the Morel A dish. And you can see there's still some varying types of mycelium in there, mostly gray-brown, and sclerotia forming at the top of the bag. But it really hasn't increased in size or anything like that. This is the 4 cups of coffee water added grain spawn. And you can see it's making the sclerotia at the top. Colonized just fine. The 6 cup ones colonized just fine as well. And you see here's a dish of the D culture that these bags came from, and you can see the sclerotia forming on it. Again, just making some extra small ones here and there, but not really gaining in size on a dish or on the grain. Now these two sets of bags I made, where one I just threw the grain at the top, unmixed. You can see, let's see, let me get over here where there's some good light, and I'll pull them over. You can see it's making quite a bit of sclerotia against the side where the grain was and on the top, but still not all the way colonized. It's only about maybe 75% the way there. And really no sclerotia being formed away from the grain right there. Maybe it will eventually. Whatever happens, doing it this way is going to take a lot more time. What I think is working better though are these bags where I've mixed the grain spawn into the plain sawdust. And you can see there's sclerotia everywhere, and the bag's fully colonized. So that's a lot. And they're getting pretty sizable. That one's about getting to be almost the size of a dime there. Don't look like they're very thick, just kind of up against the plastic. They're very numerous. So that dispels the myth that you need a border between so-called non-nutrient medium and the grain spawn. I have some more thoughts on experimentation on the outdoor beds I'm going to make with these. Back to the notion of after a forest fire you get morels. I'm thinking that that doesn't really have to do much with the low nutrition zone of the ash, but more to do with you have an increased amount of water in the environment for one, because there's no living trees or grass or anything to soak up the extra water from the rain, and the ashes soak up a lot of water too. Also too, I'll post a link of a video of when some old cottonwood trees got blown over from a storm. Ripped up the roots from the ground, and where the root balls are tons of morels growing out right after the tree died. So possibly after a forest fire, that's what's happening, is that you're having morels pop out of root areas, getting the signal that the tree is dead. Another thing too that people don't think about is soil compaction and disturbance, where, you know, for instance, like when you find those large puffballs, a lot of times they're along paths or heavy clay areas, you know, areas where the soil would be really compact. So that's another thing to think about, since morels like to come up in gravel and heavy clay along the side of driveways. I've even found a picture of one that came up in the center of a rock crack. So there might be something to that too.